So Nancy, please have a seat.
Thank you for doing the critique.
Our pleasure. So we're going to have Nancy read the story, and then from there we'll start the critique. And as she reads it, Ed is going to scroll it up, because it's really, unless you're an auditory learner, which most people aren't, you can just read it right on the screen as she goes along. And this is an upmarket thriller novel excerpt.
Home is Where You Go by Nancy Webb. The summary is Coral Watson returns to her Texas ranch 40 years after a tragedy forever changed the lives of those who survived. When long-buried secrets lead to finding a body on the ranch, Coral and her sister Amber are swept up in a vortex of international conspiracy. This is the prologue. Southwest Texas, 1976. Jackalopes are calling, Gray yelled as he reached inside the barn door and grabbed a rope looped over a post. He exited in a flash of red and jeans and mud-choked boots. The legendary jackrabbit with deer antlers was the kid's most sought-after trophy. "Hey, y'all headed out?" Hank Wilson called to his son, shaking the last of the oats into the horse trough. Hank scratched Buttermilk's forelock, and the big buck's hen tossed her head, halter chain jangling, demanding her master continue their breakfast ritual. Knocking hay off his boots and khaki trousers, Hank buttoned his canvas jacket against the wind. He walked through the mud and mist, hopscotching puddles. Stepping into the trailer shed, a lean-to on the south side of the barn that glowed sepia-toned in a yellow bug light, Hank pushed his cowboy hat back and combed his fingers through his dark straight hair. He paused, a grin softening his rugged features, as he watched his stair-step, tow-headed children scurrying around loading the olive drab Jeep. At 16, 15, and 14, Gray, Coral, and Amber looked like uneven triplets. All wore Santa's recent gifts, matching hunting jackets, blue denim with tan corduroy collars, and red plaid blanket linings that accentuated their similarities. Gray, firstborn and tallest, topped out at just below 6 feet, a tall drink of water, as the saying went, with baby Amber a bit past 5 feet and Coral in between, each with pale hair, thick and wavy. Gray's buff and outlaw long, according to his father, Coral's sleek honey ponytail, and Amber's banana pudding page boy with bangs that refused to lie flat. Eyes of blue gradations, azure, hyacinth, and cerulean. Their watercolor painter mother loved to use exact color names. But it was in their faces where each child's individuality showed. Gray, like his father, with straight nose and chiseled cheekbones. Coral, slumped, soft and tulip-like, reaching upward. Amber, round like the moon, with secret, unexplored depths. Leaning across the Jeep, Gray slipped his .30-06 into the scabbard on the passenger side near the gear shift, while Coral took her little sister's shotgun and tucked it with her own on a piece of old rug between the front seats. The girls climbed through the open sides and into the back, avoiding the roll bar, a curved pipe just behind the front seats that Hank had welded to his Army surplus Willis Jeep, his tinkering toy. The spare tire centered above the rear bumper and arced like a blackened moonrise. Thunderstorms had passed, but clouds hovered. Sunrise, still more than an hour away, played an unknown hand. Hank buttoned his jacket against the lingering gusts from last night's blue norther that raced across his River Road ranch, dropping the temperature to mid-40s. "Well, happy last day of deer season, kids. Y'all gonna get that wily buck been hiding out by the river?" "Sure, him and a mess of jackalopes," Gray laughed. "But the big rat don't want to be taken. You ought to know, missing him last time." Doesn't want to be taken, Amber corrected from the back seat. Daddy didn't miss him, Coral said in defense. His rifle locked up. Locked up from buck fever. Gray punched his father's arm, grinning. The old man ain't got it no more. Anymore, Amber chanted. Amber piped down. Hank shook his head. Amber showing off. Always got to be the center of attention. Little Miss Narcisse, he and her mother in private sometimes called her. Stepping back, Hank motioned toward the lane and the southern half of the family's almost 1,300 acres on the north bank of the Nueces River, some 60 miles from the border with Mexico. Y'all go have fun. I'll get the pit ready to barbecue those jackalopes when you get back. Now be sure to get a turkey for your mother. Wait! The back door screen slammed. Ophelia Watson, her shock of blonde curls tied back, ran down the steps through the porch light circle and out the yard fence gate. You forgot your thermos and snacks. Her golden bandy rooster swaggered out of the way with a complaining cackle as Ophelia ran to the shed, her blue velour robe reaching to her monk boots. She handed a paper sack to Coral, who stashed it on the back floorboard. Ophelia gave goodbye kisses all around, and with one last reminder to the kids to close the pasture gate so the cattle wouldn't roam, Hank stepped back, arms interlinked. The parents called in unison, "Good luck, be careful." Ray turned on the headlights and backed out of the shed. Following the two-lane track, hacked through thick mesquite and cactus that paralleled the river, Gray cut the engine downwind of the jackalope ambush stands, the kids' name for their deer and hog hunting spot. About a quarter mile south in the pecan bottom, wild turkeys roosted on the bank of the river. The girls, as instructed, would wait until Gray shot, then sneak through the brush to the river and take their shots. Now wait 5 minutes after I fire, Gray whispered as he cut the engine. I'll probably take him down with my first shot, but you girls wait. Count to 60 5 times before you start out, and be quiet. Coral nodded and mouthed, "We will." "I'll use my watch," Amber whispered back. "That's why I'm wearing it, stupid." "Whatever," Gray mumbled. "You be careful, Gray," Coral said softly. "And here, wear my cap. Your cowboy hat is too dull for walking through the woods." "Deer are colorblind," Amber informed her brother and sister, who ignored her enlightened wisdom. Switching hats, Gray smiled and whispered, "Thanks. Nobody shoot at what you can't see real clear. Now load up." A dark mist swaddled the Jeep. No birds called, no game or varmints ventured through the underbrush. Twilight lightened the cloud cover. Sunrise would come at 7:30, if at all. The kids had a while to sit and wait, girls in the Jeep and Gray in his deer stand. Amber wriggled around and found a kneeling position on the back seat. Coral removed her gloves and pulled matching Remington 12-gauge double-barrel shotguns from between the seats. She handed one to her sister. Breaking the barrel, Amber inserted a brass and green No. 5 lead shot shell into each chamber and lifted her gun back up. Gray, reaching to pull his rifle from the scabbard, scooted toward the passenger side and leaned across the gearshift mound. As usual, his scope hung. He stretched and raised up to loosen the gun without messing up his scope and precise sighting. Issuing a few whispered curse words, he worked the shoulder stock back and forth with care. Standing behind the driver's seat, Coral broke the shotgun across her left arm, letting the barrel fall toward the outside of the Jeep. She pulled a pair of shells from the half dozen stashed in her jacket pocket and let them slip into the chambers. Snapping the barrel to the locked position, she shifted her gun to her right forearm, and reaching up, Coral pushed back Ray's cowboy hat that had inched down his forehead. From next to her, Amber whispered, "I'm ready." Coral felt her shotgun slip. Her feet rose from the floorboard as the world exploded. Her shotgun hit the roll bar. The world exploded again. Brush vibrated with beating bird wings and panicked wildlife. The blasts replaced by screeching warnings. Frantic shrieks and screams reverberated through the mist. A jackalope paused, Coral saw, in a clump of prickly pear beside the Jeep. Coral lay across the front seat. His head, blonde hair, brains, bits of bones, covered the dashboard with red and yellow. The folded windshield tray light held an array of color and mass that disappeared onto the hood and into the dark. An odor of gunpowder and a life stench, death stench, filled Coral's nose, permeating her entire body. Coral's legs locked as she stared down at her brother's form draped across the seat. His hands clasped the gun stock, now loosened from the scabbard, but hanging partway. His boots, freed of the clutch pedal, caught the side of the Jeep, and his blue denim shoulders reached the far side of the passenger seat, and there he stopped. He had no head, just pulsing squirts of blood, hanging somewhere unseen on the running board and muddy lawn beneath the Jeep. "Where's my cap?" Coral thought. Amber huddled in the floor corner of the back seat, clutching her shotgun, cringing, trembling. Her knees were pulled to her chest. Her blue eyes glowed bright circles in the darkness made darker by the spare tire's dawn shadow. She stared at the back of the passenger seat. She seemed to grow in size as she raised her shoulders. Her head rotated. Her vision moved across the dripping dashboard, then down the outside line of the seat to the sideways stream of blood on the running board. She turned and looked directly into Coral's eyes. In a voice, frigid and lethal, Amber said, "You shot Ray."
Wow. Good reading. Thank you. Good read on one of those, I don't know, those shows where they have a narrator.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you.
I thought that your writing was really good. I thought it flowed well. You have really good verbs and adjectives to describe. I mean, even in the very beginning, mud-choked boots. That's just really good. And hopscotching puddles and just really good sentences and explanation for everything. So, and I think that as we move forward, for me anyway, that the fixes I'm going to recommend, I don't think they're difficult. So you did a really good job. So I want to bring up two things and I'll pass it on to the group. The first one is, I have a few, but I didn't know it was, and maybe I missed it, I didn't know it was still dark out until the end of the second page. So everything I was picturing up until you said that it wasn't dark, I need to know that right at the very beginning.
Okay.
Because I didn't know that. You said morning, but breakfast, of course, I don't live on a farm, so I'm thinking breakfast.
Oh, okay.
It's just
All right,
breakfast.
that's
And that's
good.
kind of important for setting. And then, of course, that's an easy fix. And the second one is when Ray gets shot, I couldn't picture it. I understood where you were going, but I have an engineering degree, so I'm very picky about, I can't help it, so this is how I see stuff. So I couldn't picture like the angle of the gun and when it went off and which way it was facing. So I just pictured the gun, like how did it slip out of her hands? I mean, they're used to holding guns for 14 years. I just couldn't buy it. So even though I can buy what happens after that, which is, I almost couldn't, I had to skim a couple of sentences. I needed to know like how that could have happened to a little bit better. And then those are the two things that I'll open with. I'll come back.
I agree with Sue. I think that Your writing is beautiful. You use some amazing imagery that I'll say what Dave will say, which aggravates me because I can't do it. So just some of the imagery is just beautiful, and I marked it on here. I get just the couple of examples that Sue gave. You know, hopscotching, the puddles. You know, I could pretty much picture everything. I was a bit confused about the gun going off again, but that's very easily fixable. And I have a ton of positive to say in here about your writing. Obviously, you have a beautiful command of the language, and your storytelling is fantastic. And I would definitely keep reading, definitely, because I want to know what happened. If I were to pick like two things as suggestions, you know, we have a saying in writing, kill your darlings, right? So as much as this language is beautiful, there are just some areas where you slow the story down with description. Beautiful description. Okay, so take those words, put them in a bank, right? So you can use them later, right? But when the father kind of stops and describes the kids for 2 paragraphs, it slows the flow, especially where this is leading. Like you just want to kind of keep with the story, and you know, we don't need to know that they're blonde. You know, so some of the description I kind of said, okay, maybe shorten this, you know, or maybe take this out or move it, you know, later in the story. The other thing that I would suggest is that from the summary, I'm assuming that that the book is Coral's story. Is that true?
Yes, this
Okay.
is Coral's story.
All right. So, and she's the one that ends up accidentally shooting her brother.
Yes.
Okay. So this prologue, and at first I was like, why is it a prologue? Why isn't it chapter 1? But now I know why, and I totally agree that it's a prologue. So, but why tell it from the father's point of view? So if this is Coral's story, Coral's invisible until she shoots her brother.
Yes.
And even with it being from the father's point of view, I was still very moved and really shocked when the event happened at the end.
Right.
So I think it could even be more give me more goosebumps if you told it from Coral's point of view. So when she shoots her brother, like I have no idea how she feels about her brother. Does she love him? Does he bully her? All right, so show their relationship. Maybe they're getting ready. Maybe dad isn't observing them. Maybe Coral is. So when she shoots her brother, I'm like, I'll either be like, oh my God. Either she hates him and it's like, was that really an accident? Or, oh my God, she loves her brother, and how is she even going to survive this?
You know,
Do you know what I mean? It's just a suggestion.
I might do want to compare.
Yeah.
Because this is almost more omniscient than because Hank gets out of the picture and
Right,
the story
so why
goes
even have
on.
them, right? So I think you can add some depth if you tell it from Coral's point of view, especially since she's the one. Again, feel free to ignore.
I agree.
Everything is said.
Relationships are all kind of oriented towards Hank. Hank
Yeah.
with Gray, Hank with Coral, Hank with Amber. And it's like, well, there are relationships between these 3 too. What do they think of each other?
I thought Amber.
There's a little bit between Amber and Coral.
Yeah, like I thought Amber was even more clearly drawn than Coral.
Because she's-
Right. You get a sense of her, right? That she's like the little smart, you know, I don't want to swear, but the little smart or whatever, you know, correcting everybody. And I didn't get a sense for Coral, and I want to.
Okay.
Right, especially now that I know what she has to live with for the rest of her life. You know, and like I said, given all that, I would still have kept reading.
And by the way, when Jen was talking about some words that even though they were beautiful, that she thought some of it wasn't needed right here, I thought the same thing on a few of them, so I just highlighted them. So you'll see when you go through my notes, and it's up to you, but
Except the banana pudding. Hair.
I love that.
He is critical.
No,
He is critical
I
through
loved
that.
it.
So
No, I loved that. I
you
loved
didn't take
that.
that
Just
away.
get rid of that.
No idea.
oh, I could see.
Oh, I
why
loved
you
that.
did
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I gave that a check too. That was.
I didn't take out that.
Okay.
Your imagery is beautiful.
Yes.
Just the way you
Appreciate
describe
the blue.
things.
We lost him.
With
She lost you a pudding?
With-
It was cerulean
Three shades of
to
blue.
ask.
Oh, the 3 shades of blue.
But you
You got me.
Plus my 64 pack crayons, crayons. I love this. We've never critiqued a prologue before. I want to see the rest of the prologue and then see how you start chapter 1. I am so very curious. You had me at jackalopes. Well, I can make an allusion to, oh my God, Jerry Maguire. It's beautiful and sick and sad. Not sick, but just
Oh, it is.
tragic.
It is.
Tragic.
It is so tragic.
If I may, on page 5, you point out shrieks and beating wings, and that's brilliant because all of a sudden we have the external noises of the animals, and then it goes quiet. There's no other mention. And perhaps you could say that the shrieks were mirrored, were echoed, were drowned out by the shrieks of the girls. They were louder than the animals because they're so horrified, or they may be hushed at that point. But perhaps have animals come too, or have the animals flee from the jeep. They must have
That
some
comes.
reaction. Thank you. Excellent. I apologize.
No, that's okay.
Early top of page 6, when you were describing Gray's demise, oof, I read it, but I was disturbed in a beautiful way. Disturbed, if one can say that. Perhaps compare it to something in a horror film, to something, because we as society, not I personally, but we seem desensitized to Walking Dead and graphic TV shows, Criminal Minds, some books or movies, and so maybe mention it and then say, but this is real. This is happening in front of me. It's tangible. It's palpable.
And it could happen.
Oh, it certainly could.
I'm not saying the zombie apocalypse couldn't happen.
I think too, if we go along with what Jen said with Coral's point of view, even though that's where you move toward the end, I think it could be a little bit more dramatic. Because if you look at the last page, it says, an odor of gunpowder and a life stench, death stench filled Coral's nose, permeating her entire body. For me, it's too far removed. So when you get to the next sentence, Coral's legs locked as she stared down at her brother's form draped across the streets. That's a lot more real, you know, and I just, an immediate, as opposed to a sentence that's worded nicely, but she's not going to be thinking like that. She's going to be a lot more, like Ed said, immediate with what she sees and how it's coming at her. She's going to be in shock, or maybe she doesn't even see it at first, because who would believe they could have done something like that? But if I
And
had done
she has her
something,
hallucination of the jackalope. That's a
Yes.
hallucination.
But if I could
already.
dovetail with what, I'm sorry, with what you just said, her first thought is, where's my cat?
I
That's
love that.
great.
Really? I'm outraged, honestly.
No, she's in shock.
Dissociation.
She is not even believing what she's seeing.
Right.
Dissociation.
Like, you know,
She
Nancy
thinks the
could have
smallest
said,
things.
Nancy could have said, Coral was in
Yeah,
shock.
that's-
Yeah.
That's not going to elicit anything, but
Yeah.
at first is, where'd my cat go? And I'm like, she's in complete shock. And I thought that was perfect.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I want to say, first of all, you're really brave to have this. I mean, there are a lot of writers, I'm first on the list, who don't make their characters suffer, who don't make bad things happen to their characters, okay? But you, I mean, page 5, you've killed a child, which is the most horrendous thing that can happen in any story. That's it. Okay, so page 5, got that out. So, it's like, I want to see what happens next.
Yes.
When I saw the word prologue, I wrote down, uh-oh,
Me too.
because people in publishing, they are not into prologues.
Tell me.
Oh,
I wrote that too.
But they do
So
publish them, they do publish them, but I think that this happens
But,
40 years ago.
Yeah.
For me, I think,
so I think you want to rethink, I mean, why can't this be chapter 1?
It's tough.
It's a tough
I love prologues.
Yeah.
And I've been to a bunch of writers' conferences. I'm sorry. Can I have 10 more seconds?
It's all yours.
20. So with prologues, when I've been to different writers' conferences, a lot of agents have said we don't like them. So I started and I thought, I love prologues. I grew up reading mysteries, and every single book I read had a prologue. So I started doing my own informal survey the past couple of years. A lot of people don't read them.
Yeah.
They think they
just
can skip them.
Yes.
I said, how do you do that? Well, that's what people do.
Yeah.
So it's just something to
Sure,
consider.
I could do chapter 1, 1976.
And I don't agree with it, but just.
And then
Could
change
be-
date next
the
chapter.
Chapter 2
Absolutely.
would be
All right, now
present
Dave's
day.
date, we
Sure.
want
There you
Dave
go.
to talk. So I'm gonna stop.
I think you've raised the bar very high with this drama. And as I read it the first time, I was a little confused at the opening scene, but as I read it the first time, I was wondering where you were going with so much description. And then I tried to translate it into a movie. How long would this take in a movie? So all of this description of the color of hair and shirts and sizes of people and so on, that's done in 15 seconds. You're taking up a lot of time, 2 pages. And I always go back to what agents have said personally and publicly. if you haven't nailed the reader in the first page, literally, on the first 3 paragraphs, you'll never get an agent. Now, with this much beautiful description, and the kids are terrific, and they're a wonderful family, and they're going to do what kids do in Texas, they'll kill things, and you've captured it very well. The drama, the contrast between the quiet, sneaking up, getting things ready, and then blam, kid's head goes flying into the wilderness. There's no more greater tension than that. I wonder if you could bring that further, but then I thought about it even deeper. I think this is Coral's story, and she's going to live a life of hiding this horrible truth.
Yes, she is.
Okay, do you need this here? You're giving everything away.
Yeah.
You're giving it all away.
So this is the heart of darkness.
Get Coral, get us involved in Coral's life now, and she's acting oddly. There is something hidden. People talking, whatever, I don't know the rest of the story. So, what you're doing is you're giving this to us for nothing. This is gratis.
Yeah.
Here's the reason she's miserable. And then we follow her misery, I assume, for another 300 pages. Why don't you have us wonder why she's miserable and have this trickle in, get little bits of this, and then we will, rather than being given this, we will discover it, which is the real writer's eye.
Yeah.
You'll allow us to do that.
It's amazing inside.
Oh my gosh.
That's interesting.
It's like catch-22. It's like catch-22.
What is wrong with,
I can-
yes,
Yeah, the guy is constantly thinking about what happened in that one mission.
that's
And
right.
it's like through, 3/4 of the book, you're wondering,
Which book?
what the hell?
Catch-22.
What happened in this
She
mission?
keeps on crashing airplanes.
And then you find out what happened.
Yeah, I know
And
that one.
It's like,
You could have a flash of red plaid in a store window, and that could trigger, oh my gosh, trigger.
Well,
A word that could trigger.
You've got, you're spot on,
But-
because it does in
I
chapter
do.
one.
Bonus points, bonus points.
Nice, you do.
Yeah.
Check plus, Julie.
it's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
is
that's
very,
clever.
very
You know what
interesting.
else that's done? Not at the beginning of a book, but if you've read The World According to God,
Yeah,
you
it
get
does.
way into the book, and there's a scene where the young boy dies in a car accident in the driveway, and you don't know it in the next chapter except by his absence. It's a very interesting way to do it.
Well, the Prince of
So-
Tides, the Prince of Tides is
Oh,
one.
that's
Right,
right.
that,
You don't
that they're
know.
a mess, you don't know why they're a mess until, but then you realize why they're a mess.
Yeah,
Like,
this is discovery.
so there are books that do it like that.
Yes.
I don't necessarily disagree. I think this would suck me right in the beginning.
Sure.
But I understand Dave's point.
Right.
I'm so
Are
engrossed.
there any other big points here, because we're pretty much...
Well, late.
Oh, yeah.
If I could make a grammatical or wording, I'm not sure how to state this, that's terrible. On page 6, the last paragraph, Amber Huddle, where it says, she stared at the back, she seemed to grow in size, her head rotated, her vision moved. I think I'd make it an active verb with she as the subject, so she raised, she rotated, she glanced at, so it's more,
That's good.
so it's stronger, it's more forceful.
And other pieces like that, when it becomes grammatical or word choice, we've all marked this
Yes,
up.
yes.
So if we don't have time to do it on air, then it's here. You can just read through all of our comments. And then after you read through them all, then you can always send any questions you have, just send them in.
It just gives us a chance to escape before you yell at us.
I do want to say you had a great setup, because on page 4, you have Gray giving explicit instructions to the girls.
Yes.
Wait for 5 minutes, and as soon as he said that, I thought, hunching
Wait a
accent.
minute.
But
Hunching
that's good,
accent.
because that's foreshadowing.
Yes.
That's what I was.
I know,
Actually,
but it's both,
No, I took that
foreshadowing
out.
and it's not distraction. What's the word?
Red herring. No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
Was that-
You're getting us on a different track.
Tangent.
You're getting us on, different word, magic.
It's taking that.
We'll find it
it's
No,
out.
going
deficit.
And we'll put it in a little note at the
Yeah,
bottom.
No, it's
exactly.
going to a
You're
different
yeah,
narrative.
you're having us think of one thing, or you have me think of one thing, hunting accent, then all of a sudden, in the Jeep, bam, it's like, holy crap.
Sooner than
Yeah.
we expected.
You know.
Sooner than you expected.
Yeah, exactly, beautiful, great setup.
Okay, we do have to wrap it up.
Yes,
I
yes.
apologize.
Well,
But
I
thank you.
appreciate it so much. This
Thank you
is
for
just,
coming.
this is
Oh,
just,
thank
your
you for
words
sharing this.
Well,
You have
thank
a
you for
great
sharing
start.
your work.
Yeah.
This is a
Yes.
terrific start.
Great start.
Thank you.
Definitely.
We hope this helps. Thanks everyone
Thanks,
for
Nancy.
coming.